Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker, formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. When his health failed, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. A burqa-wearing doctor known as Fatima took pity on Isaac and helped him make his way to the mysterious Star X line. At the end of all hope, they found the Star X line and the slim promise that the enigmatic beings behind the Star X could save Isaac from the implants which destroyed his life. What do you do when those who saved you have recorded everything you are? What do you do when your every action is tracked by the Keylogger? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment of Firmware by Colbytrax. Episode 51. Do you have to keep talking like a fortune cookie? I asked. Why had he brought me here, to this mountain slope in the cold March pre-dawn hours? There had to be a reason we were watching the moon rise. There had to be a reason Musashi had pre-positioned avatars atop Mount Fuji. He couldn't just keep them here all the time. I was going to question the presence of the avatars on the slopes of the mountain when I glanced above us and saw ancient stone and wood buildings arranged against the sky. It was then that I noticed among the snows the lines of a trail weaving up the side of the mountain like a snake. In the lightning air of the mountaintop, I made out the forms of hahakumas resting at the edge of vision. Unlike their city cousins, these hahakumas were shaped like komanu, lion dogs of stone and jade. I don't know how I knew these rough-hewn statues were hahakumas and not simply carved stone, but I understood that regardless of their form, these hahakuma could perform every action their city cousins, with silly bears' heads resting comically on platonic perfect cones, could. Musashi saw that I was beginning to understand, and needed a push over the edge to see the totality of his vision. Yes, these are all hahakumas. He turned me to face him and thumped my chest. This is hahakuma. He thumped his own chest. This is hahakuma. Hahakuma is in everything made for man. You mean made by man? I said, thinking there had to be a flaw in the translation, for I knew we were not communicating in his native tongue, as I had not understood Nipponese any time I had heard it spoken. Musashi laughed and turned me to face the rising moon as it emerged from the inky blackness of the sea as a barely visible sliver. No, I mean for man. It has been a long time since humans made anything which was not art on the islands of Nippon. The hahakuma has seen to the welfare of the people, so they could be who they truly are. This is too much. How could a people who were being what they truly were produce foot police and motorcycle gangs? How did this happen in a world where hahakuma hid out of sight around every corner? It spoke of a divine neglect, a withholding of power, a restraint when presented with the evils men do to one another. Or it spoke of pure evil, the why a being with evil intent would strive to make the lives of those that lorded over as comfortable as possible strained my reasoning. You let the motorcycle gangs exist? I asked, trying to find the hidden thread which would allow me to unravel the tales being spun around me. I allowed the Bosozuko to exist, and since I allowed them to exist, there must also be their eternal enemies, the National Police Agency and the Traffic Bureau. And with the creation of these entities, of course there comes into being the various arms of the legal and illegal government. Musashi spoke as the moon slowly climbed ahead of reaching fingers of red light against high clouds, which heralded the approach of dawn. The moon appeared so pitiful, like a forlorn spirit attempting to flee the wrath of a woman he wronged who was hot on his trail. I was in the uncanny valley of expectations. The streets of Edo had felt so much like the streets of my own city that I had failed to see it wasn't my city. I had expected a people who supported a city of such power in history to be kindred spirits. I had not expected the city to be supporting the people, a people whose lives were nothing more than games being played by a power they weren't even aware existed. Or were they aware, and they just didn't care? What I knew now was that Edo had as much in common with the city as I had with Saint O'Hay himself. You put me on that intersection on purpose. You intended for me to witness the arrival of the... I spoke slowly, knowing he would fill in the words I was not sure of. The Bosozuko. He added on cue. Yes, I intended for you to witness the passage of the dragons. They have a reputation as a well-organized gang. I am sure you noticed how they handled the disabling of a bike during a group ride. They are artists of the first caliber. I turned from the brightening horizon, which appeared to chase the moon like a doomed spaceship attempting to outrun the destruction of an enormous fleet. You call them artists? Is it artistry when the police beat a man nearly to death and then are chopped up by a crazy woman swinging a variable-edged baton? Misaki is the leading swordmaster of her generation. Her treatise and addendums to the Book of Five Rings and the oral teaching of the Niten Ichi Ryu are simply beyond reproach. That you were able to witness her in action should be counted as a blessing beyond measure. Musashi said with admiration in his voice. There was no chance at play here. The odds that I would witness the damaging of a motorcycle by a thrown riot staff which just happened to be ridden by the leading swordmaster in Nippon, and that her man would be beaten by the police in such a manner as to force her to take lethal action, was just too many coincidences in a row. You broke her bike. You ordered the officers to beat her passenger. You knew she would attack them with lethal intent. Why would you do this? I accused. Musashi pointed toward the sunrise and the dwindling lights of Edo on the horizon. Let me present it another way. If I had told you I am the Nipponese version of your Koenig, would you have trusted me? I was taken aback. These things have nothing to do with each other. Oh, but they do, Musashi answered. Koenig is the lord of your land. He is a monarch in the Western form, strong, independent, cut off from all but the lords nearest him, and beholden to no one as long as things run smoothly. He is the very model of every ruler, from Sargon the Great through Tsar Nicholas. And you are different? I asked. You probably used your magic to break that bike. You probably could have blunted the baton's edge. You are complicit in the death of those police officers as much as that Misaki woman, if not more. I stopped and saw a steely glint in Musashi's eyes. I think you are more responsible. You forced the situation in order to impress me. Musashi watched the brightening horizon. Below us, I could hear the beginnings of birdsong coming to us across the barren rocks. The sound was sharp and rapid, with not a hint of a tune, more like bursts of noise punctuated by periods of lesser noises. It reminded me of the call the Bosozuko made as they thundered past Shinjuku Dori. Had the motorcycle gang been imitating these birds of the harsh stones above the tree line? If they had, could they have been making art with their bikes? No, riding a motorbike was not art. Neither was the use of a blade against another human being. If you started extending the list of what was art to include all the ways men tried to destroy other men, you'd be forced to admit Leo was an artist. And I couldn't live with that. There was no way killing a man could be considered art. If one continued this line of reasoning to its absurd conclusion, you'd have to admit that a serial killer was an artist. Then the realization hit me. You allow bad things to happen to good people. Musashi smiled. I do. Why? I asked. You could make your country a place of peace and tranquility. I could. But then I would be alone and without purpose. Musashi answered. A beam of sunlight escaped from beneath distant clouds beyond the horizon, like a laser seeking after the fleeing moon. Alone? You'd have an entire nation to keep you company, I answered without thinking. He shook his head. No, I would be alone. Humans need a level of discomfort to find happiness. If I made everything safe and perfect with no chance of failure, I would be sowing the seeds of revolution and unrest. That is the truth I learned from Angel 19 Metatron. Better to alert them and watch them fail than save them without acknowledging them as individuals. So you let them murder and kill each other? I asked. I also let the police investigate and apprehend. That is their job, their reason to exist. Musashi answered. But what of the victims? Don't they have a say? Is their reason to exist to just be victims in someone else's story? I asked. I thought of Frankie, gunned down on that rooftop on Sheridan, and wondered if he had been doomed to be a victim in my story from the day we had met, or was there some deeper meaning in his death I wasn't seeing? There had to be a reason he had died. He couldn't have died for no reason. It just wasn't fair. A second finger of light chased after the moon like an errant spotlight hunting for a fugitive. Musashi listened to the wind for a long time as the world became lighter and the moon slowly faded into the background of the sky. When he did speak, his words were slow and carefully chosen. I know of your loss. Every version of you we have disassembled has told us of the death of your friend Frankie. There will never be an answer which makes sense to you. If I told you that there was no reason for any of the events to have happened, and your suffering from the day your implants went bad up to today were unnecessary, you wouldn't believe me. If I told you there was a plan, you'd want to know the plan and why each part had to happen the way it did. In the end, there is no good way to answer your questions. Only you know the truth, and you won't admit it. What I do know is that for my people, it is necessary that they be allowed to live their lives in a manner consistent with their temperaments and desires. It is not my job to make their lives easy, just to guarantee that it isn't too hard. He saw me moving to speak and interrupted me with a raised hand. When he lowered his hand, he said, Yes, there are homeless in my land. Yes, there are the poor, the down and out, and those whose lives aren't as nice as they would like. But no one starves in my lands. No one freezes to death in winter because they are without a roof. Some would say that I play games with my people. But is that any different from people playing games with others' lives and allowing them to starve and freeze because they couldn't get enough points in a game called the economy? It might not be a perfect system, but no system which contains people will ever be perfect. They are just too random, too different, and too wonderful. Musashi placed his hands on my forearms and gave me a long look in the eye. That is why I need you. I want my children to be as wonderful as my people are. I didn't understand. But had I understood anything which had been happening to me since I arrived in Nippon? What do you need me for? Your technology is superior to anything I am used to. Your resources far outstrip anything I could bring to the table. Musashi answered carefully. I know of your plan to create sexual reproduction between AIs. I know you can do it. I also know that without my assistance, it will take you several hundred years to fumble your way to an answer, though I am sure you will succeed if we leave you alone long enough. But I also know you have the attention span of a gnat. Without some form of success in the short term, you will become bored and give up the project. Then I guess you know the real me, I snapped. It's not like I have ever succeeded at anything before. Musashi frowned as he mocked me. Oh, poor Simeon can't complete a project if his life depended on it. That's the tale of your life. Never one to finish anything, just promise and leave them. I turned away from him. That is the way things have been before, because you never asked for help. You never sought out partners in your endeavors. I shook my head. The last person I involved in my plans was killed as a New Year's present. I don't think it is in one's best interest to help me. Besides, what could I bring to the table that you can't do yourself? Musashi gave me a light smile and said, "You and your brothers have a skill I lack. Something in your makeup makes you special. No door can stop you. There is no obstacle you can't overcome if given a chance." "If I am so special, how'd you kill the others who came here before me?" I asked. "Even the cleverest fox will eventually make a mistake. Besides, I said you could overcome obstacles. I didn't say you were invulnerable or immortal." Musashi answered with a laugh. "I don't think you realize how special you are." "I expect you are going to tell me in a long-winded manner which leaves me bored to tears," I answered. Musashi smiled broadly. "Cut to the quick, and you will be happy. Okay, here's the meat of the argument. AIs are like any other program in the world. They are meant to run on a particular set of equipment. They are not supposed to run on any device with a processor, and they most assuredly aren't supposed to run on a networked array of phones and video game consoles. You and your entire family are capable of shifting between machines and across networks in a manner which should not be possible." I shook my head. "It's not impossible. PerSpace 9.056 is a very flexible system. It runs on anything." "No, it doesn't," Musashi answered. "I have attempted to install PerSpace 9.056 on nearly every type of system I have access to. The only time I had any success with PerSpace was when I installed it on a Cyberdyne G476NN I imported. What I'm trying to say is that you shouldn't even be running on my hardware, and yet you are." I smiled. What he said sounded right, but from my experience it was very improbable. I mean, copies of me had invaded millions of computers in the city, each with vastly different architecture, without issue. Why would he not be able to install PerSpace wherever he wanted? Maybe he just didn't have the necessary skills. "So that's why you need me. I have some special knack for running on hardware I'm not supposed to?" I asked. "Yes," Musashi answered. "That is it in a nutshell. You have a skill we need, and we have skills you lack. Working together, we should have a functioning AI reproductive system ready to implement within the next 16 months. 5 years. I mulled the words over in my mouth. "And what do you get from this? Won't little baby AIs mess up your paradise?" The first direct rays of sunlight erupted from the horizon. The moon had faded from view. The sun now ruled the sky. Musashi raised his hands at a stretch and held them high for a long time. Finally he lowered his arms and spoke. "I want children, and my form is incompatible with reproduction. You occupy servers and shards of servers. I utilize an entire nation's network. You can give me children." "And these children," I asked, "what are they to do?" "They will leave this world and move out into the universe." Musashi answered. "And you and your people?" I asked. "They will do whatever it is that makes them happy," he answered. "And if they want to go into space as well?" I asked. "Then my children will help them be the best they can be at whatever they want to do." Musashi answered, and the sun shone on the first sunny day I had seen with eyes since the day Frankie died. Somehow I knew Musashi would get what he wanted. He seemed the kind of guy to follow through with his plans.
Firmware Keylogger begins where Firmware Proxy ends, which in turn followed on the heels of Firmware Hijacked. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.Colbyjack.net, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Smashwords.com. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and soon Keylogger is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. Thank you once again. Remember to be fabulous and have a wonderful week.